Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding this watch. Today we are discussing one of the most pivotal models in the history of the very old Blancpain name. This is the reference 50 Fathoms. It debuted back in 2007, and while it is very much in the style of that period, being 45 millimeters in diameter, it preserves the lovely proportions and details that debuted with the 50th anniversary model back in 2003. This watch, even in the era of a 42 millimeter reference 5010, continues to sell better than the newer model because people just dig the size. And this is a beautiful watch at 45 millimeters in diameter. Maybe not as thick as you thought, 15.7. This is an unconventional look. People love the X71 bracelet, but due to price, very few order it. We've got it here. Lug-to-lug is 51 millimeters. Add the end links to the bracelet. It is a much bigger watch at 56 millimeters across the wrist with a 23 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it is very solid. I would even go so far as to say that I could wear this watch, and while I'm more comfortable wearing a 50-15 on a strap, you could see, even with the somewhat awkward tight pull that I'm accomplishing, because the links are all in the bracelet here, but it does fit. Proportionally, this is probably the smallest wrist that can wear it, but it does work. In profile, you do benefit from that cupped case back. It sits lower than its measured thickness. Here's your over the top. Taking a look at the bracelet, you can see why the X71 is so regarded. It has very little lateral play, and that's because if you look, you could see that the way the links join together, there's sort of a countersink of one into the other. Now, there is some gapping in the middle to avoid trapping too much wrist heat. The bracelet on the Chopard Alpine Eagle also has countersunk links, and it has the same lack of side-to-side play, but it doesn't have any relief to vent the wrist. This has a few well-chosen gaps. You can see a combination of satin and polish primary and intermediate links, and also quite a few removable links to size it down. Taking a look at the clasp, you can see it has the leaf spring system made famous by G&F Chatelain. So the way this works is it actually has a little trap door built in. See that right there? It's a lateral clamshell, and then the clamshell has two interlocks that physically join the two sides together. Everything about this bracelet exudes quality and refinement. Now, the way it's joined to the case with screws and bars is reassuring. You'll need 2 hex screws of the proper size to remove it, but this is a lot more secure than a spring bar arrangement. It's a semi-conforming link, not integrated to a Royal Oak or Nautilus level, but more like a Rolex level, where the link flows naturally into the profile of the lugs. The case itself, in its entirety, is bright polished, and you can see the distinctive Blancpain notation on the flank. Pre-owned watch, of course. These are a little bit non-standard. You can see a little bit of marking on the bezel as well as the case flank. And then a very large knurled crown with a crown guard. The more vintage-inspired 50 Fathoms tend to do without crown guards. Think the reference 5000 bathyscaphe, if you want an example of that. What makes these special, or at least aesthetically what makes them special, has always been the cambered sapphire over the bezel. There are a lot of flat sapphire bezels. You'll see them from Grand Seiko, IWC. You'll also see some of the Supermarine models from Bremont, and they're all flat sapphires. This has a camber or curvature over its top, which makes it look almost permanently wet, like a dewdrop. It creates a little bit of a magnifier effect too, and once again, that word quality comes to mind. It just seems more upscale than the flat sapphire capped bezels that we see elsewhere. You can also see that the primary sapphire is vaulted and cambered to give it a bit of a vintage plexiglass look. On the dial, one of the features people seem to miss on the smaller and newer 5010 is the center dial disc, which does articulate and break up the expanse a little bit. And then we have quarter Arabic numerals, applique indices, and sort of hybrid broadsword syringe hands that have always been a distinctive trait of this model. I'll wind this up so we can see it in motion. It does have 3 mainspring barrels and a 120-hour or 5-day power reserve. So this is a bit of a super tanker among dive watches as far as power reserves go. Today, 5 days is still quite impressive. Back in 2007, it was almost without parallel. It's also a very durable movement, as the 1315 in here is built on the 13RO, which, though a dress watch movement, was built to be almost unbreakable from the outset. The watch has no shortage of lume because of the sapphire cap over the bezel. Luminova can be placed right on top of the bezel without any danger of it being chipped off. So the watch is fully lumed. All three hands, so you know your dive watch is running in the dark, and then the 120 click bezel as well, where we have the first 15 minutes in their entirety and then every 5 minutes after that marked. A superb timing reference. I'll take a good dive bezel over a chronograph any day of the week. The watch does feature hacking seconds and a quick set date, the 5-day power reserve by 3 mainspring barrels, automatic winding, 35 joules. These earlier examples are 5 position adjusted, which is the chronometer standard. This example was retailed back in 2014, and all of it pivots on the 35 joules, beats away at 4 hertz. It is a free sprung balance for shock resistance. It's a fairly large movement that nicely fills this large case, and though you cannot see it, the quality of decoration is high, albeit primarily mechanically applied. It's more convincing than what you'll find on, for example, JLC or AP. And this watch is a 300-meter diver. I've often described it as the Cadillac of dive watches, and I continue to feel that way. The solid caseback versions have a metal cage around the movement. So under this caseback, there's another cover still to provide protection against dust, but more to the point, also an extra element of anti-magnetic qualities. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.